What's a fact that's real, but sounds completely fake? When baby horses are in the womb, their hooves are soft and have tentacles on them to prevent them harming the mother. They look really weird but drop off in 30 minutes. Baby horses are in the womb, their hooves are soft and have tentacles. Horse feathers. Mantis shrimp strike their prey so quickly, with speed up to 51 miles per hour and acceleration up to 10,400 g, that it generates cavitation bubbles between their claw and the surface of the prey. The prey is hit twice. First by the claw at a force of 1,500 newtons, and second by the collapse of the cavitation bubbles, which produces a shockwave strong enough to stun or kill much larger prey than the shrimp itself. They can crack aquarium glass and split open a human thumb. Woolly mammoths didn't completely die out until about 1,000 years after the Great Pyramids of Giza were constructed, and French explorers on expedition to the North Pole in 1872 found so many preserved mammoth specimens that they were able to survive by cooking and eating their meat. When you get a kidney transplant, they usually just leave your original kidneys in your body and put the third kidney in your pelvis. Yes, this is true. Both my dad and little sister had kidney transplants. It was explained to me that keeping the old kidney in was because it still partially functions. Charlie Chaplin outlived Elvis Presley. It's amazing how many people think Chaplin died in the black and white film era. People used to eat ground up mummies and put it into other products too. This created a market for it, which led to fake mummies. Much more recently, dead people dried out, being used in a similar fashion. I love that they still chose to use real corpses for their fake mummies. Like, why not just throw in some ground beef with stuff in it? The first part of our bodies that form are the butthole and the mouth, and then everything else grows in between them. We are a type of organism called a deuterostome, meaning two openings. Meaning, we were all born buttholes. A class of fungus known as mycorrhizae can infect the roots of plants, leaching away the sugars created by the plants, but in return giving them access to more nutrients, as the fungus can spread much further than the roots of the plant. The fungus can actually connect two plants together, allowing them to share nutrients and communicate with each other, warning of invading insects or pathogens so the other plants can prepare defenses, for example, in an underground network of sorts. I just learned this last week when I watched Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. It blew my mind. Those pictures of Chinese water deer with huge vampire fangs I thought were a hoax for years, like the drop bear. When I saw one I was like, what the heck, that's a real thing. Yeah man, Chinese water deer are metal. Used to work in the countryside and came across two raking at each other with those fangs. The noise was gnarly. I once won a game of Trivial Pursuit because I knew this. General Feldmarschall Gebhard Lebrecht von Blücher believed himself to be pregnant with an elephant fathered by a French infantryman. Blücher, horses whinny in distance. There was a Charo army created here in Mexico to defend the country if the Nazis arrived. Imagine a similar outfit as the one the mariachis have. That's a Charo. 100,000 men and horses using guns and machetes. Of course, it sounds ridiculous to think that such army could make any harm to Hitler's forces, but the fear at that time was such that they would have done anything to defend the country. I learned in biology class that if you have a gene turned one way, licorice tastes sweet, and if it's turned the other way, it tastes bitter. There's also a gene that does the same for cilantro and another one for celery. The first humans didn't arrive in Madagascar from the African mainland but from the Malay archipelago across the Indian Ocean. To this day, Madagascans speak Malagasy, an Austronesian language. That kind of makes a little sense to me, since I understand that there was a bigger culture of transocean travel in an archipelago than on this huge continent that is Africa, which doesn't have a lot of islands around it. There was just no need or interest for this kind of travel. Horses evolved in North America, spread to Asia, then went extinct in North America, and were reintroduced by European settlers. Camel-like animals originated in Asia, then spread to the Americas and Africa as llamas and camels respectively. In Asia they disappeared. That's how the camel-like animals live relatively close but divided by an ocean. The Isle of Scilly, pronounced silly, and Netherlands are not sure if they have been at war for 300 years, so they signed a peace treaty recently just to make sure. Actually, it was the Dutch that silly was at war with, not the Swedes. Either way, it's still a wonky war. We have lost the original videotape of Apollo 11. What we see is a camera recording a TV, because the process for sending image from the moon to the earth was not compatible with TV channels, and after the mission they forgot to check the videotape, so someone probably deleted accidentally what was on it to put a TV show or something. A Canadian soldier, Leo Major, single-handedly liberated the Dutch town of Zwolle from the Nazis during World War II. It's not even a small town. Dang, this should be a movie. Trees communicate with each other via pheromone scent signals as well as other methods. They use this to warn each other about drought, disease, and to share memes. I'd like to know what kind of memes trees like. Atropa belladonna, aka deadly nightshade and beautiful lady, was previously used by women in Venice during ancient times to make their pupil size dilated in order to look more attractive for the men. It's now used as medicinal purposes to cause dilating of the pupils by blocking a specific nerve receptor, and it's also classified as a poison. Bamboo is a grass. Echidna has 4-headed penis. Peanuts are legumes. Beans. Some carnivorous plants are sticky enough to trap birds, not the monkey cups in jungles. I'm talking about mats of sticky leaves strong enough to keep birds from flying away. Some people do not react with poison ivy, poison oak, or poison sumac. Giant kelp can grow up to 2 feet a day under the right conditions. Giant redwood and sequoia trees' branches get thicker as you go up, allowing for unique ecosystems to develop at their canopies. Pineapple is a kind of bromeliad. Strangler figs literally choke other trees by squeezing their trunks until they die. Some plants have no chlorophyll and get nutrients by parasitizing other plants. There is no agreed upon botanical definition of tree. Point for me, I don't react to poison ivy. Australia had a prime minister that went swimming in the ocean and then just disappeared. We still don't know what actually happened to him. Also, we lost a war against emus. And there's an unconfirmed rumor, I think, that our current prime minister took a poo in a McDonald's. He did a poo in his pants while he was still wearing them. We have a weird history. You need to edit this, because ScoMo didn't poo in a McDonald's. He shat himself in a McDonald's. Edit. Not gonna lie, I didn't expect my first comment to get an award would include the word shat. To test the safety of an aeroplane ejector seat today, you'd use a sophisticated crash test dummy with lots of sensors. In 1960, however, the US Air Force used a drugged black bear that weighed the same as a human pilot. This, and vending machines, have killed more people than sharks. I just surprised that drugged black bears being ejected from planes has killed anyone. Your brain predicts what you are about to experience before you actually experience it, by an infinitesimal amount of time. Our vision, in fact, runs 100 milliseconds behind the real world, so our evolution has adapted our brain to predict what is about to happen before we actually see it happen, and it is usually right, but not always. Hence, our entire reality that we experience is actually a story that our brain creates of the real world, and not in fact an experience of the real world. Weird neuroscience stuff. If you take a tree and uproot it, then take all the leaves off of the tree limbs and plant the limbs down in the ground, the original roots will grow leaves and the old limbs will become the roots. Life finds a way. A test with 90% accuracy might only produce accurate results 50% of the time. It's called the false positive paradox, and it is a subset of base rate fallacy. Take 1000 people. 100 of them have a certain characteristic. If you have a test that's 90% accurate in detecting this characteristic and administer it on all 1000 people, you will get 90 true positives, 0.9x 100. 10 false negatives, 0.1x 100, 810 true negatives, 0.9x 900, 90 false positives, 0.1x 900, 90 true positives, 180 total positives equals 50%. In this example, getting a positive on a 90% accurate test is only 50% reliable. This has implications with rare medical conditions. Even though the test might have very high accuracy, there are too many people that do not have the condition. So even the small chance of a false positive means that those will outnumber the true positive numbers. That's why doctors often run tests multiple times when something weird and exotic is diagnosed. In my example, you retest the 180 positives. You will get 81 true positives, 0.9x 90 true positives, 9 false negatives, 0.1x 90 true positives, 81 true negatives, 0.9x 90 false positives, 9 false positives, 0.1x 90 false positives, 81 true positives, 90 total positives equals 90%. After a second test, the percent of true positives equals the test's advertised accuracy. That's also why you're told to get a PCR test after getting a positive lateral flow test. I recall reading that while lateral flow tests are 95% accurate, only 12% of people with positive results actually had the infection. I have to. 1. Cleopatra 7. The Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramids. 2. Mansa Musa of Mali was the wealthiest man in human history. He was so rich, when he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, he spent so much gold on the way that he actually caused rapid hyperinflation of basic goods because he devalued gold so severely. He actually had to buy the gold back at an increased rate in order to stabilize the entire regional economy. When you're so rich you single-handedly break an entire regional economy by spending money. Operation Northwoods. The US devised a plan where they would attack and kill their own citizens and blame it on Cuba in order to garner support from the US people for an invasion of Cuba. Kennedy vetoed the idea. Penguins crap with the fastest force out of all the animals in the planet, because if they shat any slower they would lose internal body heat. Scientists suggest that the ring of Saturn is 100.1 million years old and sharks species as a whole is 400 million years old. That means the species of sharks is older than the ring of Saturn. Evidently a few people's grandparents are also older than Saturn's rings. In 1970 scientists confirmed Chernobyl was safe. Chernobyl in this case means wormwood. It was believed that wormwood drove people mad. The city of Chernobyl is named after the surrounding wormwood forests. After being suspected of eating a toddler, he was ejected from the hospital. Next time I'm having a bad day I will look back on this and just be thankful that I've never been so hungry that I had to resort to eating corpses and children. I feel like maybe this was supposed to be a reply to a higher up comment about terror. The golden age of piracy began in the aftermath of the War of the Spanish Succession, which was caused by the Spanish Habsburg dynasty going extinct due to inbreeding. So in other words, we have the cousin fricking Habsburgs to thank for Pirates of the Caribbean. Amazon started off as an online bookstore. The crime rate in the Netherlands is so low, they have to ship in inmates so the guards don't lose their jobs. It takes 3,000 cows to supply enough leather to supply the NFL for 1 year. Antarctica holds the 90% of the world's freshest water. I got dozens of these. They use reflective paint on reindeer antlers in Finland to prevent drivers from hitting them in the long, dark, icy winters. There was once a guy in China who got a penis transplant. It had to be removed soon after the procedure because it drove the man and his wife insane. Even though the body of a caterpillar is almost completely dissolved during metamorphosis, the insect still recognizes toxic plants as a butterfly. There's a hypothesis out there that caterpillars and butterflies are two distinct symbiotic parasitic species. The one hatches and eats before being overridden by the other that transforms and breeds. Jalapenos were not originally spicy, but they became spicy as a defense mechanism against humans, but all that did was make it worse for them. The guy who sang Peanut Butter Jelly Time died in a police shootout while his brother-in-law Snoop Dogg tried to talk him down over the phone. Sloths can starve to death on a full stomach. It has to do with the enzymes microbes in their stomach that doesn't allow them to digest properly. So they basically have food just sitting there, in their belly. When doctors do surgery and have to get past your intestines, they just move them aside and shove them back in randomly when they're done. Your body reorganizes them on its own. Oh man, I had a hysterectomy when I was 27 and the most effed up part of the whole thing was absolutely feeling my organs slowly resettle over a period of weeks. That was the weirdest ever feeling, especially being newly -1 relatively large, dense organ. I'm used to it now, but man, what a weird way to lose weight. Lemons are not naturally occurring. Humans created them as a hybrid of bitter orange and citron. Cleopatra lived closer to the release of the iPhone than she did to the creation of the pyramids of Giza. Pyramids built 2600 BC. Cleopatra alive from 69 BC to 30 BC. iPhone released in 2007. Mosquitoes are responsible for half of all human deaths. About 108 billion humans have existed. Mosquitoes are thought to have killed about 54 billion. Michael Jordan was the general manager of the Wizards. Drafted a player, couldn't stand him complaining, so he became a player for the Wizards to play with him. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.